What is up, and welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers. Hope y'all have been well. We're talking about the NCAA today. There's no time to waste. Let's get into it. All right, so college basketball season just started, and you know I'm a huge fan. One of the big stories heading into the season is obviously the defending national champs on the women's side, LSU. They not only brought back a lot of important pieces, but they also added even more in freshman Michaela Williams and transfers Anissa Morrow and Haley Van Lith. Make no mistake about it though, Angel Reese is the centerpiece of this squad. She had a great year last year, obviously. I mean, they won the national title, and she's just so expressive when she plays, talking trash, flexing, all that stuff that I personally like a lot. She gained national recognition for taunting Caitlin Clark at the end of the national title game, and so she's now this incredibly polarizing figure. So she and LSU are headed into this season with huge targets on their backs. And I was reading this article in The Athletic about her by Chantel Jennings, and it was talking about the insane summer Angels had since becoming one of the faces of college basketball after that title game. It touched on how relieved she is the season starting because she's missed the routine of basketball season. She's just been all over the place this offseason, mostly related to fulfilling obligations for the NIL deals that she's secured since everything happened in that national title game. She just signed a deal with Reebok, thanks in large part to Reebok's new president of basketball, which is an awesome job title, by the way, Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq went to LSU himself, and he's also known for all his endorsements because if the price is right, Shaq is there. Call 1-800-GENERAL now if you don't believe me. So Angel is a little bit more selective with her deals, if for no other reason than Shaq just doesn't say no, but she's been cashing in, and rightfully so. In addition to Reebok, she's also signed with PlayStation, Raising Cane's, McDonald's, Coach, Wingstop, Amazon, and Outback Steakhouse. She's also made appearances on TV shows, music videos, the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. She's been everywhere. And that was the talk of the pregame show too before LSU's season opener against Colorado. Brendan Haywood was talking about how she's taken full advantage of the NIL era and how she'd have to take a pay cut to go play in the WNBA. And that got me thinking, first off, because it's wrong. WNBA salaries need to be higher for sure, but guess what? They're already higher than NCAA salaries, which, if my math is correct, are $0 per year. Again, NIL deals hide behind those three letters, but they're essentially endorsement contracts that one could assume would carry over when they turn pro, possibly even getting bigger. And I kept thinking about it as the game went on because LSU was getting run off the court. Now, this isn't entirely surprising because you know how I feel about super teams. Also, it takes time to develop chemistry when you add that many new pieces. My concern for Angel in particular watching this go down was that she hasn't really added anything to her game. She still has the same weaknesses she had last season. And when you think about all of her obligations in the offseason, that's not really surprising. I mean, she did play for Team USA a bit over the summer, but similar to my opinion on AAU, playing competitive basketball games doesn't lend itself to working on weaknesses. Your instinct is to go win, which means you're going to play to your strengths. So, I mean, when would she have added post moves? There just wasn't any time. And why wasn't there any time? Because she was maximizing her earning potential the only way the NCAA allows, through name, image, and likeness deals. Now, those who are against paying college athletes, most notably the NCAA, since they've spent millions trying to prevent athletes from getting paid, use a lot of arguments against paying players. One of the most common ones is that they're protecting the amateurism of college sports. They've created this term student athletes, and their student athletes should be focused on school and playing their sport. When you hear about Angel's offseason, all that she did, does that sound like an athlete who is able to focus on school and their sport to the fullest extent that they can? Or does that sound like an athlete who is taking on obligations far outside the confines of amateurism to maximize their earning potential, since that's the only way that they can currently make money off their talents? What if the NCAA, by not having their colleges and universities pay these players, is actually forcing these athletes to operate as professionals to the detriment of the athletes? Would Angel have taken on as many deals if she knew LSU was also paying her a salary to play ball? What would her offseason have looked like if that was the case? How would her game look now? Or how about the Bewley twins, Matt and Ryan, at Chicago State? We just saw all these incredible freshmen start their college careers, whether it was Malaysia Fulwiley and all her highlight reel plays as she battled it out with another freshman, Hannah Hidalgo, in the South Carolina Notre Dame game, or Juju Watkins dropping 32 points to break Lisa Leslie's record for most points in a debut at Southern Cal, or Jacoby Walker scoring 28 for Baylor to help them beat Auburn. We did not get to see the Bewley twins, two five-star prospects who chose to play for their AAU coach at Chicago State because the NCAA declared them ineligible. They have filed a lawsuit to overturn that, but would they have even been in that situation in the first place if college athletes were paid to play? The twins signed to play with Overtime Elite before their junior year of high school. This was for the 2021-22 season, or right after the Supreme Court looked at how the NCAA was stopping athletes from making money off their name, image, and likeness, and was like, are you serious right now? Again, the same Supreme Court that can't agree on basic human rights or protections for its citizens with justices who are like, does racism really exist? Or I just don't see why women should be in charge of their own bodies, looked at what the NCAA was doing and unanimously agreed they were fucked up. Nobody really knew what the NIL landscape was going to look like, so the twins signed with Overtime Elite, or OTE, a league for 16 to 20-year-olds in Atlanta that just produced the number 4 and 5 picks in this year's NBA draft, Amin and Asar Thompson, who are also twins, but that's not a requirement for the league as far as I can find. After the NCAA finally started adding some structure to this NIL thing, OTE adjusted its deals with players to offer an option that's more NCAA compliant and allows them to act as more of a prep school. And you've seen players like Rob Dillingham at Kentucky go that route and come out with his eligibility intact, but that wasn't available when the Bewley twins first signed. So the NCAA declared them ineligible for having played professional basketball so that they can preserve amateurism. Nah, just kidding. Like I said earlier, the NCAA does not care if these athletes operate as professionals. Matter of fact, NCAA bylaw 12.2.3.2.1 states that athletes in sports other than ice hockey and skiing can compete on a professional team provided the individual does not receive more than actual and necessary expenses to participate on the team. This rule was changed to accommodate European players who were coming over to play collegiately after having been on professional teams in their countries, but it also applies to athletes here as well. The issue the NCAA has with the Bewley twins is the second part of that bylaw concerning getting paid more than actual and necessary expenses to participate on the team. They claim the money the twins made for OTE exceeds the average monthly expenditure in the United States. Now, according to court documents, it does. The twins each made a little bit over $33,000 a month. The NCAA also factors in if they were given meals, housing, and classes, stuff like that. So they brought in far more than the average monthly expenditure of just under $5,600 a month. The Bewley's argument, which I love by the way, is that they were paid money for their name, image, and likeness. And honestly, if you have a basketball league, paying 2 5-star prospects to market it would make sense, so perhaps the actual playing of basketball was ancillary, which makes all this bananas. First of all, if the NCAA paid athletes or even had a real structure for NIL deals from the jump, maybe the Bewleys don't go that route in the first place. Secondly, the issue isn't the amount of money they made. I guarantee Angel Reese makes way more than that. It was that they got this money to be on a basketball team. The NCAA can't have that. You want to kill yourself going from this promotion to that promotion to make NIL money? Fine, make as much as you want. The boosters will even facilitate it. You can even play professionally if you aren't compensated to do so, which brings me back to my larger point. The NCAA doesn't actually care about these athletes being professionals or amateurs because college athletics are largely professional already. An amateur is someone who participates for their own personal satisfaction without getting paid. Does that describe the coaches, many of whom are the highest paid public employees in their states? Does it describe the conferences who mix and match schools with no rhyme or reason other than will this combination generate the most TV money? Does it describe the schools who want the NCAA to lobby so hard so they don't have to pay players directly but have no problem with boosters or whoever else spending their own money to get them to come play at their institutions? What about flying athletes across the country in the middle of the school week to play softball because it benefits their conferences thanks to football TV money feels amateur to you? Or doing away with guaranteed NIT bids for regular season champs from mid-major conferences so you can give those bids to bigger schools as a way to protect against postseason tournaments being organized by the media partners of those bigger schools? Does anything about prioritizing mediocre at best programs from power conferences over better programs from smaller conferences make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside about amateur sports? The NCAA and these schools are already out of the amateur sports business in how they operate and how they treat the athletes. Professionalism isn't the problem. They operate as professionals and they treat the athletes as professionals. When they're saying we don't want this to turn into professional sports, what they mean is we don't want to treat the athletes as employees. The NCAA felt the tide turning with the NIL ruling, so they did exactly what you do when you want something to fail. Nothing. They let all hell break loose, providing no structure or guidelines, despite this being something they should have been preparing for, even if it was their worst case scenario. Instead, they just sat back and watched the shit show. And of course, a lot of the public sentiment was, man, see what happens when you let college athletes make money? They don't know how to act. Even though little to none of the chaos was caused by the athletes themselves. It was the boosters, the coaches, the shady collectives popping up, the adults that were fucking everything up. Finally, the NCAA decided to step in and try to unring some bells, and they're acting like a fucking Scooby-Doo villain, complaining about these meddling kids, and man, these kids need some structure. You know who has structures for the NCAA to model when it comes to paying athletes? Pro sports leagues. Again, not because they're professional, no, because they treat their athletes like employees and sign contracts and they pay them to play their sport. If they really want some semblance of structure, that's the solution. Let them form a union, let them collectively bargain, and let them sign contracts based on that collective bargaining that lets everyone know what the expectations are for all parties. Compensate them fairly for the services they provide that generate billions of dollars in revenue, so maybe they don't have to decide between staying in school versus turning pro or working on their game versus going to do this commercial. You might have athletes who still choose to do that. Angel Reese might not change a thing. I don't know. But at least they would have the choice. And luckily, it looks like the NCAA might not have a choice soon, as they are joint defendants along with the University of Southern California and the Pac-12 in a National Labor Relations Board case that claims they unlawfully classified athletes as student athletes instead of employees. I am not a legal expert, but the complaint essentially says the NCAA and Pac-12, quote, administered a common labor policy with USC regarding athlete working conditions. That would make them something called joint employers. This is important because the NCAA and Pac-12 are private organizations, so if they're found to be employers of athletes, then they are subject to the National Labor Relations Act. And if USC athletes are found to be employees of the NCAA and a major conference, then that means athletes at other schools are too. Losing this complaint would also open the door for college athletes to form a union, even at public schools, which are typically governed by state laws, and a lot of state laws don't allow unions for public employees. But again, they'd be employees of the NCAA in whichever conference, both of whom are considered private employers. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that, but it just feels like it's a matter of time at this point. For me, I love college sports. I'm going to keep loving college sports no matter how much I hate the NCAA as an organization, and I definitely want a separation between college sports and pro sports. But the way to accomplish that isn't to not pay the players. And as much as I've heard people complain about college athletes making money, I've never heard anybody say, you know, I love college sports because they don't pay the players. I try to get into the NFL or NBA, but it's just hard because I know they're getting a paycheck. People love college sports for other reasons. The NCAA should focus more on protecting those, the traditions, the regional aspects, the rivalries. Those are what make college sports awesome. Most importantly, don't fuck up March Madness, all right? Please. All right, this has been another episode of Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. I appreciate you watching, listening, rating, subscribing, reviewing, and sharing. Also, I was just on At the Plate with Danny Foxworth talking about this past MLB season, so go check that out. Have a great week, and I will catch you later.